Someone told me a little bit ago that because of all the little snowdrops outside this morning, you won't have school tomorrow. Okay? Deal? No school tomorrow? Okay, no school tomorrow. I have a game that I love to play. Okay, matter of fact, if you come back week after week after week, you'll probably play this game quite often with me. Okay? It's called Will It Sink or Will It Float? And I'm into all types of crazy things because I don't know why some things do what they do and other things don't. So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to hold up the first item. It's a paper clip. Okay? Pretty pink paper clip. And I want you to raise your hand if you think when I drop it in the water, if you think it'll sink to the bottom, raise your hand. Okay? If you think it will float, raise your hand. You can't choose both. Okay, so most of us think it'll sink. Down to the bottom, we have a sinker. Good. Let's try something a little bit more challenging. My 5-hour energy drink. Okay, it's still full, but it won't be later, I promise. Do you think that this, it's just a little bit, will sink? Raise your hand. Think it'll sink? Raise your hand if you think it'll float. Ooh, you got about 50-50. And, oh, it's floating. Look at that. Can't let it go too far because I won't be able to get it later. So that's a floater, right? That's a little bit more difficult. What about a coin? Do you think the coin will sink? Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you think it'll float. Okay, let's see. Oh, sink all the way to the bottom. 2 more. A pencil. Raise your hand if you think it'll sink. Raise your hand if you think it'll float. What do you think it'll float? It floats. Not because it's stuck, but because it's wood and the buoyancy. It's a whole different class. When you get to high school, you'll figure it out, okay? Yeah, you gotta know a little bit more than I do. Which is a lot. And finally, a baseball. Heavy baseball, ready? Will it sink? Raise your hand. It's heavy. It's gonna sink? Or will it float? Raise your hand. But it's heavy. You know how heavy that is. You don't think that's gonna sink all the way to the bottom. Okay, we're gonna test it. It floats! Isn't that interesting? Look at that. Now, you may say, Pastor Kyle, why did we play this silly game? Because over and over and over in the Bible, there are stories. Today we're going to be talking about with your parents and grandparents. We're going to be talking about a miracle. Something that Jesus did that just, sometimes we don't know how it happens. Just like we don't know how the pencil might float, or how we might have that 5-hour energy drink float, or the ball. But the Bible tells us all these stories that sometimes don't make sense. But just like we saw those things float, even though we didn't think they might, some of them, or sink, his disciples, Jesus' disciples, saw the things that he did. They saw it with their eyes. So they believed it was true, just like we believe what we saw was true. And they passed it down in our book called the Bible. And that's why we tend to believe what the Bible says is always true. Okay? Would you like to pray with me? Close your eyes and repeat after me. Dear God, thank you for stories that teach about Jesus. Help us to believe even when it's difficult. Amen. And you can be dismissed down to branching out if you are going that way.